welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to choke slam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler, and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barry Griffiths. Now today we have Omar Ruiz with us. How are you doing today, Omar?
I'm doing great, Barry. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming along. Omar is the co-founder of LeRu Investments. Do I say that right? LeRu? How do you
sure did.
Okay. I was worried about messing that up. Is the co-founder of LeRu Investments LLC and Home Choice Property Management, Inc. LeRu Investments acquires value-add multifamily and single-family homes to increase value, improve resident appeal, and achieve higher investment returns for our investors and communities. Home Choice Property Management is a residential property management company that manages rental properties for other landlords in the area of Long Beach, Orange County, and Inland Empire of California. So that's a little bit about Omar and his company. That was a little bit more, but we'll get into that in the interview as well. So thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you. You just tell me that you're in sunny California where it isn't too hot, just not quite like Vegas right now, where I think you can boil an egg outside right now. So
it's hot enough.
So can you share with us a little bit about your background, a little bit about what you've done on top of what the bio, and let people know who you are, I guess.
Sure, absolutely. So me and my partner Jeffrey, and he's not here right now, he's out in Texas right now. We actually started many years back in property management. And we started in property management because we always had the idea of getting into multifamily and getting into these larger apartment complexes. I picked up at the some meeting just the concept of having more doors under less roofs. But we always understood that the important thing about the multifamily space is the property management. So we figured, okay, if we knew all there was about property management, then it doesn't matter whether we're here in California or out in Texas or the Midwest or Southeast or whatever, we can contract with third-party property management companies, make sure they're implementing our systems and our procedures, and mitigate a lot of that risk, because there are good property management companies and there's terrible property management companies. And I've had a few of those myself. I had to fire them and bring in a new person along. But so that's how we started. We started with property management. I had a contact that way back when, and I'm talking like back 2006, 7, just before the recession. Actually, you know what? No, it was straddling the recession of 2008, because a very interesting thing happened. So this individual, they were trying to sell it was like a little 7-unit multifamily in the city of Riverside, California. And if people aren't aware of Riverside, California, and the whole Inland Empire, that was an area that, in my opinion, was the epicenter of the subprime debacle that wound up causing the recession. There were a lot of borrowers, I should say, that were taking subprime loans, and so there was tons of foreclosures out there. The city of San Bernardino, County of San Bernardino, was just littered with REOs, real estate owned foreclosed homes. So anyways, this individual, they were trying to sell this multifamily, but they didn't have they didn't keep good books and good accounting. So they didn't have any good financials that they can present to a prospective buyer to, make them an offer on the property. And, with the recession and everything going on, it was tricky for them to sell this property. So we said, pretty much a win-win situation. We said, look, business, let us manage the property for you. We'll lease up the units. We'll get you guys some good financials that then you can present to a buyer, and then sell the property. And they said, okay, well, that sounds good. So that's what we did. So we managed their little 7-unit complex there. And I tell you, man, I mean, I loved it. I spent probably more time there than I probably should have, but you know, it was a new thing for me, you know, and I remember one time, you know, just I mean, I treated that place like it was my place, you know, and I enjoyed just going into the parking lot. I'd have a little broom with the little scooper sweeper thing, you know, and I'm up there sweeping the parking lot, you know, and I would just, you know, just kind of imagine and be, you know, just think to myself, you know, someday I'm going to own something like this. You know, what I would tell myself as I'm, you know, sweeping the parking lot, you know, and you know, and it just went from there. And eventually that came to fruition. You know, we gave them their financial, they sold the property, and they actually became investors in our deals too. But that's where it all started. It started from managing this one complex, and with word of mouth, we got more management clients, and we were actually initially, Barry, we were looking at properties in Texas at that time, Dallas, Texas. And like I tell you, this was when the recession was just, you know, we were still straddling. People were actually, there was a moment in time, people were still expecting like values still like stabilize. So we actually flew out to Dallas to look at a property out there. And then when the recession hit, it was like everybody was afraid of real estate. And so values just plummeted. And, you know, I'm looking at stuff out there. I'm looking for stuff to buy, and I'm looking at values in a city called San Bernardino. San Bernardino is probably about maybe about 45 minutes, almost an hour from where I'm at right now. And one of the key indicators or metrics that we look at is the price per unit in multifamily. You know, looking at a deal, it's like, what's the price per unit? And I was seeing price per units in San Bernardino very close to what price per units were going for in Dallas, Texas. So we said, well, you know, why take a, you know, 3-4 hour flight? Let's just take a 1 hour drive in our back. We can pick up here. And so that's what we did. And so we started buying up, started off with the, you know, first it was a small house, then a duplex, then it was a 6 unit, then 13 units, and 30 units, and 70, and it just, you know, just scaled up from there. And so, you know, in a nutshell, that's kind of, yeah, that was our beginnings there. And if people check out I got a YouTube channel out there. People check it out. I actually stopped by that first 7 unit where we started managing out there. So there's a little video out there. You'll check it out. It's kind of a nostalgia moment for me.
I was going to say, I'm sure that place holds a special place in your heart, because that's where everything started, right?
It sure does. And it's great to see that the area has been improving. Great.
And then, you know, I'm sure at the time your dream was to own a 7 unit, but, you know, it just goes to show you, like now I'm sure I don't know what your total unit count is, but I'm sure it's more than 7, you know, so.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, way more than 7. Yeah,
it's just amazing how to start off with, you think that 7 units is a lot of units. I remember the same with me. If, you know, 10 units, you know, to own 10 units in one place is just massive. But then you start realizing, you know, with management and a team around you that, you know, even 100 units isn't even that big, you know, so. Thanks for sharing that story. That was a really cool story. I really enjoyed listening to you, and there was a lot of stuff, interesting stuff in there. I think it's great that you guys started out with the management portion in mind, because, you know, so many times that you can find a great deal, but if you have an okay property management, they can kind of mess up that deal. But if you have an okay deal and a great management company, you're gonna have a home run, because they're gonna turn that deal into a home run, you know. And the interesting thing is as well is that by running your own management company, you know what goes into it. You understand how things work. So then if you need to go hire someone else, you know exactly what you're looking for. So I think it's really interesting that you guys did that to start off with.
Yeah, property management, I'll tell you, it takes a certain type of individual to be really good at property management. It's especially being the frontline people that you deal with, the tenant and the people on a day-to-day basis. You know, your maintenance guys, you want to make sure you make your maintenance guys feel good. You know, it just takes a certain type. You got to have good people skills.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. And understand the legalities and, you know, fair housing and whatnot. So that's interesting. So you started with property management, and then you slowly grew your portfolio. It sounded like you almost doubled. So you went from a single family home, duplex, 7 units, 13, 30, 70. That's almost like a doubling, you know. It's like, I think in bigger pockets, they refer to that as stacking, where you just try and double your portfolio every time you go bigger. So.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that helped me out way back when I started was that, you know, our partner, he was back then, he was our mentor, and he owned, you know, a huge portfolio of properties in huge, you know, very humble guy, awesome guy. I mean, if you saw this guy, you know, walking through the door in the grocery, I mean, you wouldn't even have a clue the portfolio backing this guy up. But he's just a very humble, generous, just super great person. And I remember him saying a long time ago, you know, it's like, you know, every time I'm, you know, looking to add, you know, I always want to try to double up the amount of units that I buy. And so I picked up on that. And so we've always kind of, you know, doesn't always turn out the way, but that's kind of what the goal is. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That way you're always growing, right? And
yes.
So maybe talk us through you said that you bought a single family duplex and then a 7 unit. Was that your first real multifamily experience?
Well, we bought the first one was a house, and then we bought a duplex, right? And then from there it was actually a 6 unit.
Okay.
And that was, you know, that's when you start crossing into the commercial side of things, you know? And so that was very different. Lucky for us is that we were buying at the right time. This was when the recession was going on. And so values were extremely low at that time. So that 6 unit, we were actually able to buy it with hard money, with the hard money loan. And we had some investors there, and even with the hard money loan, it was still cash flowing in the double digits, you know, and this is in Southern California, you know,
unheard of.
Yeah, cash flow in Southern California, it's unheard of. But back then, you know, that recession was so historical in its impact that, you know, it actually allowed to be able to cash flow at those types of numbers. And you know, I love that property. I was bummed out that we had to sell it, but I mean, that was a property that was near and dear to myself as well. You know, but you know, you can't get too emotional with properties. You know, it's you really got to follow the market cycles, and you have to trade very. You have to be smart about how you trade up and how you make transactions, because you know, for instance, right now, and you know, now, and I was mentioning to you on Facebook, you know, I've been doing tons of due diligence just earlier this year during the whole COVID thing. You know, the markets, there's always change, and there's fluctuations and all that stuff, and so you want to take advantage of those fluctuations whenever you can. And that's what we were doing at that time. You know, we were trying to buy up as much as we can. I wish we would have bought more and been more aggressive, but being that was really kind of our first kind of go at it, learning a lot of new stuff. I think we did all right.
Absolutely. I think it would be interesting to hear your mindset at that time, because I wasn't around. I wasn't investing in real estate at that time. But what I've heard from so many people, it's easy to now look back and say, okay, I wish I'd have bought everything. But it felt like the sky was falling, you know, and everyone was scared all around, and nobody wanted to touch real estate. So maybe talk a little bit, because who knows where we are and what's going to come next. You know, we might see something similar in the future. We might not, but it might help people to hear, what was your mindset at the time when everyone else was too scared and everyone was telling you that real estate is a terrible investment? How did you guys overcome that? How did you guys decide to push forward?
Okay, well, that's a great question. One of the things was I didn't tell, you know, my mom about it, because like she was just totally, she didn't understand it. She was, you know, you have to be very careful surround yourself when you know, you're talking about your goals and aspirations. You want to be around people that are that are really supporting you. And I was fortunate to have a partner there that was, you know, we were both on the same, you know, the same mind wave, I guess, so to say, same attitudes about real estate. You know, we put all we had into it. And, you know, like I mentioned before, when I was, you know, standing around in the, you know, in the parking lot of that property, you know, sweeping around and just imagining in my head, hey, someday I'm going to own something like this. You know, that's very important when you can visualize and just kind of, you know, the closer you can be to that scenario, you know, the more it just kind of like, it just kind of stays in your head. You kind of create, and, you know, whether you want to call it, I don't know, a cosmic energy or the universe or whatever, but you kind of create a reality that pulls that towards you. And so that's what we were doing back then. I mean, I was going to as many real estate meetings as I possibly could. I mean, I was probably going to multiple real estate meetings a week. Mm-hmm. There was a group in Long Beach that, you know, from that group, I actually still have business contacts. I have investor friends, very good friends from that group that we still talk to this day. You know, I talked to the guys, you know, earlier this week. And that was a group that met every week on Thursday, and they were out in Long Beach. And Long Beach is, you know, not super close to where I am. You know, I was probably looking at about an hour drive, but I would make that drive, you know, every Thursday to just be around those people, be around that energy, people talking about real estate. It's like, you know, I wanted to surround myself as much as I could because I wanted to know and learn and pick up as much as I could. So right now, for people that are, you know, looking to start getting into real estate, I would say you want to start getting your education and learning right now. You don't want to do it, you know, once, you know, that great deal falls on your lap and you don't realize it's a great deal. And, you know, because great deals are going to move fast. And you have to be able to, you know, react immediately before the other guy, you know, who realizes what you have, you know, and you're just not able to close on it for whatever reason, you know, he takes that opportunity. And that happened, you know, there was this, you know, in fact, one of the best deals I took, you know, was a deal that fell out of escrow. And, you know, I had a great relationship with the broker. And that's another thing right now, create those relationships that are going to bring opportunities to you. Keep in contact with people, especially with the brokers, the agents out there, the people that are out there trading deals, because that deal that I'm referring to, I was just constantly in communication, giving him feedback as to, you know, and I would make offers too. You know, but one of the things about a guy like me who's out here in California looking at deals out of state, you know, I imagine brokers deal with a lot of flaky investors. You know what I mean? You know, they talk to some guy in California thinking, oh, I'll never hear from that guy again. You know, he's just wasting my time. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be labeled as that person. So when you say you're going to call somebody, you know, call them. When you say you're going to do something, make it happen. Do it. Shoot that email out, because brokers and agents, if you're giving them feedback, they know that you're engaged, and it's only going to be a matter of time before, you know, a transaction happens. Because, you know, that's, you know, brokers, they live and die by transactions. And if they, you know, have confidence you're that guy that's going to make that transaction happen, they're going to do whatever they can to throw you deals. And that's what happened. But, you know, right now is a good time to start establishing those relationships, you know, be out there, make those offers.
That's fantastic advice. Because for one thing, without that education, you might not even know it's a deal. You might have a screaming deal in front of you, but without understanding how to analyze it and how to analyze the market and whatever else you need to know, you might not know that's a great deal. You might think, oh, this is a terrible deal, I'm passing, because you don't understand that. So you need to have that education before you understand, before you look at deals, to really understand what a fantastic deal is, so that you know what you're looking for. And the second piece of that is the brokers, because that's where you know, 99% of deals come from, I would say, or I know that in the world that I deal in, that's where they come from. You know, you can do direct marketing or whatever. So those broker relationships are critical. And just like you said, I've spoken to so many brokers that said, you know, I get 10 calls a day from people looking at a 15 cap and an A-class property with a 20% cash on cash return there. It doesn't exist, you know, and they file them and they're probably never going to buy a deal. But, you know, these brokers get the deal and you want to gain that credibility. So you want to, exactly, it really isn't that hard and it's nothing too complicated. It's being able to talk the talk. So you want to learn the lingo and understand the metrics. But also it's just doing what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to call them. If you say you're going to analyze a deal and get back within a few days. Don't get back in 2 or 3 weeks after analyzing a deal, because then they're not going to take you as seriously. So then when you're top of mind and you've gained that credibility, when they get a deal, you're going to be one of the first people they come to, because, you know, you've gained that credibility and they believe that you're a buyer. And that's, you know, they have all the power right now, the brokers, you know, especially in this kind of market.
Yeah.
They have all the power. So you want to treat them like royalty, take them out to dinner, you know.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh yeah. I love to eat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a win-win situation, right? So that's great. That's great. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's so valuable for so many people to kind of learn that, especially starting out. So then from there, what was your next deal from there? Because, you know.
Well, from there, and this is where it starts getting a little bit a little bumpy right here. So from there, we doubled up to it was a 13-unit complex there.
Okay.
And that one, we were super confident about that deal. It was not too far from our other complex. It was kind of in the middle, because we owned the little the duplex up on the north side of town. The other 6-unit was about a little bit southeast of town, and this other property was like kind of right in the middle of those two. So we said, okay, that you know, we felt pretty good about it. And, you know, we got the deal, and during due diligence, and this is where I made, you know, one of my my biggest mistakes that I've ever made in real estate here, is that I didn't verify the rents being received, the income being received. You know, the seller was giving me financials and all that, and, you know, they looked fine. I didn't see any bad debts. You know, usually on bigger properties, if you see a lot of bad debts, that means there's a lot of people not paying, right? So, and, you know, this one was smaller. They just, I realized later on how badly they had mismanaged it. They had brought in just tons of just horrible tenants in there.
Yeah.
And so when we took it over, you know, we go, you know, present ourselves as the new owners and all that stuff. And, you know, most of the people were not paying rent there. Most of the people were just not paying rent. Either they didn't have jobs, or, you know, they just were not paying rent. There are some people that shouldn't even been living there. So we had to go through, you know, a whole round of evictions, getting rid of just tons of bad tenants. Interestingly enough, the only tenant that stayed with us the whole time was the one Section 8 tenant. So, you know, so if people have a, you know, a stigma against Section 8 tenants, hey, you know, they have their place. They're all right, you know. So, and, you know, we like our Section 8 tenants. You know, they do well for us. So, you know, it's on a, you know, it depends on the area. You know, you might have to have some Section 8 tenants, but at any rate,
right, on the screening for those tenants, it's just like any tenant, right? It's just all in the screening process.
Yes, the screening is very important, and we actually had to adjust our screening on there because some interesting things happened where we actually went to 2 rounds of evictions for people, because we were getting people that initially when they came in there, they were doing well. And then at some point later on, you know, they were getting behind on the rents. And then we had to just evict all these people. We were like, what the heck, what's going on? We evicted everybody. We get it leased up. We're almost at 100%. And then we had to evict a bunch of people again. And we're very methodical about how we, you know, qualify our tenants. So what I did is that I unpacked all those tenant applicants that we had qualified ourselves, and there was a common theme that we found out. And remember, this was back, during the recession times. This was I think like well, not that, it was like 2013, around that time. So the economy was still still trying to get going. But what I discovered is that on the income documentation of these applicants, they made enough income to pay for the rent. But the common thing was that they had gotten a job and they were at that job, say maybe for like 6 months or 9 months, maybe 10 months. But none of those applicants had been at that job. And so we said, okay, our new criteria is going to be, you're going to have a job history of at least 12 months to qualify. And as soon as we changed that, the eviction stopped. And I think what was happening, Barry, is that these were people, obviously they've gotten a job, but sometimes it takes a little while for an employer to judge whether that's going to be a good employee or not. And so it seems that for a certain period, they started off and they're getting in there, and then at a certain period of time, they just had to let those people go. Maybe they were just bad employees, or who knows, for whatever reason, but they just never made it to that 12-month, time. And that was a very, very interesting thing to learn back then. And,
that is very interesting. Yeah. Because you wouldn't think, they meet all the other, necessities for passing the screening process. They make enough income, they have a job, what credit score, whatever your screening process is, but
criminal and stuff like that.
Yeah, but then still, there's did you find out if a lot of them lost their job? Is that what happened, and then that's why they couldn't pay?
Yeah, because well, what I tell the managers to do, I said, if you're not getting the rent, call them at work. People hate getting called at work for rent payments. It's embarrassing, right? So it's like, and we would just be, just totally out there about it. If an employee called or the manager, hey, is so-and-so there? No, they're not here. Sorry about that. So anyways, we would just tell them, okay, can you leave a message? Let so-and-so know that they haven't paid their rent. So then now the whole office there knows what's going on. And so, so we would do stuff like that, to kind of purposely.
When at work, that they weren't. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's, again, that's why you need a good property management company. Of course, you guys are managing your own, and nobody's going to care about your own property like yourself. But if you have a good property management company that's looking into these things, trying to make things better, rather than just being happy with the status quo, that's where, a good property management company will come in, because I doubt a lot of property, average property management companies are going to look at, just like you did, and trying to find what's the reason here. They're just trying to get the next tenants in and trying to get that management fee, and that's it. But, by diving deep into something like that, you found that, that's a really interesting thing. And then going forward, I was wondering, is that something you always implement now from that one time, that they always have to have a 12-month work history, even to this day? Is that still part of the screening process?
It depends.
Okay.
Remember, that was back in those recession times. So it's like the economy was still was not like it was, in the last couple of years. Last couple of years, it was rip roaring. We would get applicants, especially out in the Midwest. We had an apartment complex out there in the Midwest, and in this market, there were so many jobs, but there wasn't enough people. So companies would literally give bonuses to people. It's a different time. Back then that wasn't happening. So, there was more people looking for jobs than there were jobs. So if you're an employer and you hire somebody and you start figuring out that, hey, this person is not really good at their job. Okay, it was very easy back then to replace that employee with somebody else because there were so many people looking for jobs. Right. Now, contrast that to what we were dealing with over there. There were so many jobs, but not enough people. Okay, that there would be people would actually, apply because they were moving in from a different area, totally different state sometimes. There's people coming from Detroit, they're coming from Chicago, they're coming from Ohio, they're coming, from like Kentucky, they're coming from all these different states because there was a lot of jobs there. And so some people would have their employer award letter where, and it would say on there, hey, this is a bonus. I totally remember I was there, because I take these occasional trips out to these properties, and I don't tell them about it. Sometimes I just sneak in, it's like, I'll park across the street, and just see, if people are coming in there on time, and then I'll just show up at the apartment complexes, and just keep people on their toes, just make sure that, and it was interesting because, and I was staying at one of the apartments there, we save on lodging because, we got a bunch of apartments there, so it's like we call it the corporate unit, the corporate unit, right? So I'm staying there, and there was this truck driver guy, and this guy, because of the certain license that he had, he's able to carry a special type of payload, not like the typical truck driver. So this guy, he traveled, I believe he was living like in Pennsylvania or somewhere like that. And so they gave him it was like, I don't know, some kind of bonus. Now it was $3,000 or $5,000 bonus or something to work for this company there in the city, but he needed somewhere to stay. And he had applied there. I think he had applied. It was like a Saturday or something. He comes in, he applies on a Saturday, and I'm like getting, I was there. I'm like, I'm locking up the place, and this guy's like, yeah, I need to move right now. Okay, right now. Well, okay, well, I'll show you a unit. Everybody's kind of gone for the day, but I'm here now. Show me, oh yeah, this works great. I need to move in by Monday. I was like, I mean, tomorrow's Sunday. Nobody's going to be here, So I told him, I'll see what I can do. So I just did the credit check myself, and then I told the property manager, hey, this guy looks clean. He's coming in on Monday to sign the lease. Just make it happen. And sure enough, the guy moved in on Monday. But that's how it was now it's totally crazy. I mean, I can tell you about the due diligence that I've been performing in the last couple of months, but when the market is like that and people need to move immediately, you have to take advantage of it. Else you're going to go to the next apartment complex and move in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's, you've got quite a bit of a portfolio. Let's jump now to maybe your biggest deal then. So that, we talked about a 7 unit and I think you said a 13 unit. What's the biggest deal you've done to date? Let's talk about that and maybe the differences in the other deals.
Well, the biggest unit that we've done to date is it's a 77 unit out there that was in Indiana. Okay. And that property there, we did a full-blown syndication on it. So, we had other investors involved in that deal. And we actually just went full circle on it. We just sold it it was on late February, like February 26, 24, something like that, just before just before the whole COVID thing hit. So, so we really lucked out on that because right after that happened, the lending environment changed drastically. Mm-hmm. And if that deal had probably gone another month out, there probably would have been some challenges with the closing. Mm-hmm. I know because right after that one is when I went to go look. I was doing due diligence. It was like on 30 some odd units. It was out in Cincinnati. And the lenders started doing their COVID reserves, and you probably know about that and how that's been affecting the
Well,
industry out there.
Yeah, maybe share with people who not everyone might be familiar with that, what they're looking for in terms of reserves now, how maybe the lending has changed a little bit since the COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this deal, we went under contract on this deal, and right in the middle of it is when the lending environment just totally changed. And so what they did, they instituted Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are what are called agency lenders, and they're the ones that are going to get you, the best types of loans on bigger multifamily property. The minimum they lend on is $1 million. So you got to be looking at larger properties to get those guys involved. But they're typically going to give you the best terms and the best rates. Sometimes you may have to pay for repair reserves, but those are the better loan products out there. And so what happened in the middle of this deal is that they instituted what they called it COVID reserves. And basically what it was is that, and it was different for both lenders. Back then, the tougher lender was Fannie Mae. And what Fannie Mae wanted, they wanted, I believe they just recently changed it because they were just so uncompetitive, but they wanted 18 months of principal and interest payments. And then they wanted, principal, interest, and taxes paid up front. Mm-hmm. So they wanted 12 months of repair reserves and insurance paid up front. So now on that deal, it actually, we were looking at coming in with another, it was over $300,000 on that deal. It was crazy. So that was Fannie Mae. Freddie Mac had their reserves, but they were asking for 12 months principal and interest payments up front. And at first they kind of were thinking about reserves, but then they eased off on that. So everybody's been kind of working with Freddie Mac, and now Fannie Mae has gone something to closer to what Freddie Mac is. But that was a really huge effect on the lending environment. My guy who's my loan broker guy, he said the CMBS market, which stands for commercial bank mortgage, those guys were out. He said those guys, they were just gone. And I think a lot of those guys kind of took some hits because they were lending probably on a lot of retail and office space and those kind of things. So really Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were the only game in town if you wanted to buy a multifamily deal at that time. The unfortunate thing on that deal, the seller on that deal, great guy to work with. He liked us. He wanted to do the work. He was very comfortable with us, but he did a big mistake on his operating agreement. And this is something, that you really shouldn't do, but he wrote up the operating agreement in such a way where it's he had other investors in his deals also. It was a portfolio deal, but on one of the partnerships that affected one of the better properties in that portfolio, his operating agreement was written up so that in order to sell it, he had to get unanimous decision from all the investors. Okay. So on all the other properties, because what we did, we went back and said, hey, the lending environment is such, now we have to come up with, these extra dollars now. So, we're going to need a credit on this deal. We need a price reduction because now all the numbers are skewed. And back then, we weren't even sure how long Fannie and Freddie were going to keep those reserves. Everybody thought they were going to keep them indefinitely. They hadn't really, specified, are they going to keep them forever? Are we ever going to get that money back? And so that affected the returns and all that. So the seller and all the other partners were ready to, give us the price reduction, give us everything we wanted, except for one guy. That one guy messed up the deal for everybody else. you know, and so that's the way it went. And so we're like, okay, well, you know, it like to work with you, you know, maybe in the future or something. But you know, they were all bummed out about it. We were bummed out about. I'm sure that property has sold by now. I mean, it was a good property, but you know, because of what was going on, you know, everybody was deals were falling through left and right because of those COVID reserves. You know, and now the deal that we're looking at now, knowing what we're going into it and planning ahead for those reserves, you know, it made it possible for us to move forward.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So a few things there for people who might have things. The operating agreements that Omar was talking about is something that they put together when you put a syndication, and a syndication is when you pool people's money together. An operating agreement is basically stating what everyone's role in the deal is, right? Would you agree with that? And just how everything is going to work. And usually how it works in an operating agreement is that the people running the deal, the general partners, get to decide how that deal is run, when they sell, when they fix things up, everything to do with that deal. And the limited partners, the passive investors, the people who just bring the money, they're there just along for the ride. They're not there to make any decisions. They're there just to collect the money and to be the investors in the deal. But what Omar was saying that was different on this one was that they had the right to vote on whether to sell or not, which is not obviously not what you want, because someone can, when it makes sense to sell and you have someone who has, other plans, they can really mess things up for everyone. So I think it's important to understand that. And then another thing that you were talking about that, people might be thinking, well, what does it matter if you're putting, 18 months of reserves of money up, there, and then you have to put up capex money as well for reserves. It can really affect the deal in terms of return. So when a syndicator goes to buy a deal, they're calculating the returns, because people who invest passively in a deal, they're looking for a certain amount of returns. Otherwise, they'll put it in the stock market or put it somewhere else. So you've got to calculate your deal. So then all of a sudden, when you have a deal lined up and you need an extra 300,000, that greatly dilutes the returns and makes the deal not so appealing, even though you might be able to get it back at some point, like you alluded to, you didn't know when that was. So that really affects the deal. So it's, some great lessons there and some, very interesting stuff. I'm sorry that the deal fell out, but I guess at the end of the day, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You've talked about it a couple of times. I'm really interested, and you mentioned over Facebook as well, the due diligence that you've been doing. Is that an expertise of yours that you're that adds a lot of value to your team, is the due diligence that you do?
Yeah. My background before I got really into real estate was in aerospace, and I was a quality manager for several aerospace facilities that created parts for airplanes and all of that. And in that industry, the quality, you have to have a quality certification. You have to keep your systems in check, and there's a lot of auditing that's involved in that industry. Mm-hmm. And I had to perform audits on a yearly basis on our company, and then we would get audited by third companies. I would be the lead guy responding to auditors. So I was very, had a lot of experience in that kind of an environment. So due diligence for me came by very naturally, auditing leases, looking at a property, asking the right questions was something that came very easily to me. And what's been interesting, that deal I was just mentioning about with the COVID reserves and all that, that was in Ohio, and it's kind of interesting because I think back then people were a little bit more anxious about the whole COVID thing going on than on this recent due diligence trip that I did here last month. If you're doing due diligence right now during COVID, you're going to be obviously you're going to have, protective gear. But back then when I was doing it, this was like back in March, I believe it was, you know, we didn't even have face masks back then. We had the gloves, and we thought the gloves was enough. It was so new. People just didn't know, the I guess the requirements, the whole PPE, personal protective equipment. People just weren't. It was so new that people just didn't know. But we went through, 130 some odd apartments. These people. We thought with their gloves were good enough, but we didn't have any masks back then. And there was a couple of units. If somebody, if you're going to go into units, do on-site, and if tenants don't want you to go into their, you shouldn't even press that issue. Just, that's fine. We'll just go on to the next one, and you're just going to have to work with it. But surprisingly, most tenants are okay with you coming in and inspecting their units, and it wasn't difficult, but there was a few units where if they don't want you to come in because maybe they feel sick or whatever, they would post a notice on the door, and that's cool. You just move on to the next one. And but the managers, they were definitely wearing their masks and all that stuff, and so they were being careful, and so that's good. And so we got through that project, and that worked out well. And it's crazy because right now, the airports are just ghost towns. There's nobody traveling right now. And in fact, even because right when I was in the middle of that trip going out there, the inspector even called me up. He's like, "Hey, Omar, I just wanted to check in because they just started. They were just doing the shutdown over there in Ohio, and nobody didn't even know. Okay, shutdown. Can I go out to eat? Can this happen? What can I do? What can I do? People are just still trying to figure it out. And so it was very interesting time, just kind of going through that and just kind of seeing how people were very anxious at that time because they didn't know what was going on. And now just last month we were down there in Texas looking at a deal, and now we had our masks on, we had our gloves, we had everything, and they said, hey, if are you guys okay? If we can't get into a unit, we can just do a video of it. Yeah, that's fine. No problem. So, so expect those kind of mitigations, if you can't get into a unit, people will take pictures or, take video so you can at least have some level of inspection of the unit. But, that's how it is right now with the whole COVID environment. You kind of really have to adjust. You're probably not going to be able to get, the full blown 100%, inspection, like people are used to before, but I heard an old mentor of mine, he had a great phrase. He said, sometimes you got to make, perfect decisions with imperfect information. Yeah. And, so you just got to kind of, roll with, you're a wrestler. You got to roll with the punches sometimes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you guys do that? How do you suggest other people do that? Say you have 100 units and the tenants are only comfortable with you viewing 80 of them, so you have 20% that you haven't viewed. A lot can go wrong with 20 units, right? So
absolutely.
You ask for footage? Do you ask if you could look in through the window to kind of see what's going on? How do you kind of, do the on those 20 units?
Yeah, and that's where you have to, kind of be careful. You got to be diplomatic about it. You know what I mean? You have to you have to kind of bend to the wishes of the tenant, because if they don't feel comfortable with a bunch of people coming into their unit, that's cool. What you can do is just ask the management company, hey, are you guys okay with at least you guys taking video of the unit? Because the tenants are going to be more comfortable with the management people there, and they've had the management people probably come in, and they could probably even just send a maintenance guy over there, hey, take some pictures of the kitchen, some pictures of the bathroom, and you can specify to them if you want them to take focus on certain things. You can ask them, please take a picture of the manufacturing date on the water heater. You can do that. Please take a picture. One of the things that I like to do when I go into units is that I'll turn on all the faucets, do kind of what we call a water stress test, and then I'll peek under the cabinets underneath the sink and see if there's any pipes leaking. You know, and you'll be surprised. You'll see, yeah, there'll be, you know, water gushing all over the place sometimes, you know, or if they have the pipes down there, you know, something's going on, right?
Yeah.
And then you can put that on your request and say, hey, Mr. Seller, I'd like for you to fix this before we close this transaction. But yeah, definitely ask the management if they could send a maintenance guy to take a video, you know, take a picture of the pipes underneath here, take a picture of the, you know, whatever, the shower, the bedrooms, the manufacturing date on the water heater, the HVAC units, and yeah, they'll do that for you because they, you know, they have to kind of step up in these situations, this time and day.
The important thing, I think, is what you're getting to as well, is that you somehow get in there. You don't need to be physically in there, but you need to see every unit, right? You can't take the risk of, okay, 80 units, they've all been immaculate, they've all been great. Well, that 20, and I don't need to check that other 20. Those 20 units, they could need 20,000 a unit. You know, they could have water damage, fire damage. You know, so you always want to try and check every unit. You know, if you can get in there, find a way. And just like you said, there's plenty of different ways these days with technology and other ways to make it happen and to find out what you need to find out so that you know what you're getting yourself into.
You know, you could even ask the management to ask the tenant to take some pictures. You know, and you can give them the list. Hey, take a picture of, you know, whatever, the sink, bathroom, this, and this, and you know, and that might be a good way to you know, mitigate that.
Yeah. Great point. So then, you know, I think that's an interesting point to kind of go a little further. So in general, you know, as you're talking about due diligence, when you're going to inspect the unit, so you're going through every unit, right? Let's take us through a traditional unit. How do you perform a due diligence on one unit, and what kind of do you look for? So if someone's, you know, they're getting ready to buy an apartment complex and they're going to go with the inspector and they're contracted to look at a unit, how do you do it, and what you suggest they look out for?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So you have your inspectors that you want to take a look at the heavy duty things. Okay, you want to have you want to hire a plumber who's going to scope the drain lines, the main drain lines, because you don't want to find out that you got roots and collapsed pipes and all sorts of crazy things going on underneath. That can be very expensive to fix. So you're going to have a plumber guy. He's going to send a little camera down there, and you know, hopefully he won't find anything. And then you're going to have your typical building inspector. Now there's residential building inspectors, and then there's guys that are more on the commercial side of things. So you want to work with a guy that's more on the commercial side of things because you know, they're just more used to looking at many units and looking at certain things on the commercial side of things. So you want to work with somebody like that, and that guy, you know, he's going to look at, you know, everything, the electrical, you know, he's going to jump on the roof. But you should have, even though he's going to look at the roof, you should have a roof guy inspect the roofs himself, because the roof guy is going to know about things that the general building inspector, he's not going to have, you know, intimate knowledge about. The roof inspectors are going to spot certain things. They're going to know, like, how water travels and, you know, what are the things that can be possible issues in the future on the roof. And you know, the regular building inspector, like I just said, he's going to look at the general things in there. So when I go in there and I'm going to go inspect the unit, basically what I'm looking at, Barry, I'm looking at the things about the apartment that the tenant is going to be interacting with on a normal basis, and thinking also, okay, what can I do to this unit in the future to make upgrades, to improve? You know, that's where I start getting ideas. But typically I'll and on this last time around, I went with the team partner. And so we split up the task. I said, I'm going to go tackle the kitchen. You go tackle the bathroom. Okay. And then there's certain, so we have some division of tasks there. So I go into the kitchen, I look around, and the first thing I do is I just crank open full blast the hot and cold water, right? And if you have a dual dish sink there, I put the spigot on one side and put on the other, make sure there's no clogs and that the water isn't pulling up, and while all that water's going down there, my team member in the bathroom, he's doing the same thing. He's cranking open the faucets on the vanity. He's cranking open the shower. And so there's tons of water going down the drain. So it's what we call the water stress test, right? Make sure that water's going down and that the drains can handle it, right? So while all that water's going down now, we're looking underneath the cabinet doors. So I'm looking at the pipes, making sure there's no water leaking. Okay, if there's, sometimes what I'll see too with dishwasher units, if there's an outlet, sometimes I see where the outlet has no cover, so that can be dangerous. You got a lot of water that can possibly leak down there, gets into the outlet, it can cause, a short or something, Look for that kind of stuff. If you see the base of the cabinet floor, water damage, okay, that's an indication that, there's been leaks under there before. But, that's pretty commonplace. So, if as long as it's not wet, whatever, that can be a pretty relatively easy fix. But, you just want to be aware that, some issues have happened there before. Okay. And plus also when you're looking down there, that's usually where all the pests are. If you see roaches crawling around in there, okay, then that's cool. I definitely jot that down and ask the seller to, request that have their pest control, do a treatment on that unit before the sale closes, right? And then after that, just, a general visual inspection. Are the lights, how are the lights? Are they looking okay? Any outlets? Do you have the GFI? Is GFI installed? Is there smoke detectors? If there's a hood for the stove, is it working? Is the light working? And then the big ticket item is like the water heater. You want to take a look at the water heater. What was the date that it was manufactured? If it was fairly recent, then that's good, because it shows that the seller is replacing those things and staying up to date on those things. If otherwise, if you start seeing that a lot of the water heaters are very old, you want to keep that in mind, because eventually all those water heaters is going to come on out of your pocket. Mm-hmm. So you want to budget for those kind of CapExes, because water heaters can get pretty pricey there, depending on how big and all that.
What would you say is a good age for water heaters, and what
Well, that's interesting, because I mean it's crazy, Barry, because over at my mom, she had a water heater that was like, God, it was so old, and it was still operating fine, and it was outside too. I was like, wow, I can't believe that thing still has life to it. So that's kind of a tough question. I'll tell you what, if you start seeing like rust build around it, that water heater's got limited lifetime there. So if you start seeing rusty things, it's what you want to kind of mitigate against is having that, middle of the night water heater that just busted on you. Mm-hmm. So if you have a water heater, God, that's an interesting. I would say if it's older than like 10 years old, okay, it's probably a good bet that you're probably going to wind up, replacing it pretty soon. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, I've seen water heaters that, after like, 3-4, years, they go bad on you for whatever reason, so unfortunately the answer to that question is it depends.
Yeah. So it's kind of a lot to do as well with the condition, right? The condition of the water heater. So age and condition. So, but if it's older than 10 years, you want to be considering budgeting something, just so that you have it. Whether you'll have to use that in the next 5 to 10 years, who knows? You might be lucky, but you want to at least budget something for that, so that you have that money ready, rather than, like you said, the water heater goes in the middle of the night and you have an expected expense. So
yeah.
Cool. So then you have your water heater. Any other big ticket items in there? The appliances.
Yes, absolutely. You want to see like your refrigerators for sure. And this particular complex, most of the appliances, we're always kind of going in there with the mindset that we're going to wind up replacing the appliances. We'll strategically figure out, which ones over time we're going to replace and all that. But yeah, absolutely. If you start seeing appliances that, especially inside the oven, it's just a mess inside the oven. It's very unclean. It's some tenants treat their appliances better than others. You're going to want to plan on that stuff. Refrigerators, refrigerators are notorious for going out for whatever reason. In my experience, it seems like stoves seem to last longer than refrigerators,
Yeah.
And, but on this particular property, I did see quite a few refrigerators, and ask the tenants too. If the tenants are there, I like to ask them, are you getting any leaks, anything going on? And they'll tell you, tenants that were telling me straight up, the refrigerator is leaking and stuff. Oh, okay, cool. Jot that down. I know that one's going to be a goner here pretty soon,
Yeah.
I
think tenants are a fantastic resource in so many different ways. Like, do you like living here? What do you think of the current management? Has there been any issues? What do you think of the area? Because they're going to give you an unbiased decision, or it might be slightly biased, but they're going to tell you the good and the bad, so they're always such a great resource. Anytime I'm on a property that I'm looking to buy, I always ask them. And even like if you have a binman or a postman, I remember one time we were doing an inspection on a property, and we asked the postman. He knew everything. He knew who lived next door, who lived down the street. He even knew all the tenants in there. He told us where they all worked, and it was like, it's amazing when you can find out when you just ask people.
Yeah, absolutely. Tenants love to talk. Tenants and the postman, those are all great resources for information.
Yeah. So we talked about the physical inspection. I'm interested a little bit as well into sort of the financial inspection and the lease audits kind of stuff there. How do you guys handle that? Those things.
So the lease audits, I've done it a couple of different ways on the bigger properties. I've done it where you'll actually, well, let me go back. On smaller properties, it's pretty common that they can just give you, copies of the leases. If you're looking at, whatever, 10, 13 units, even, 20 units, it's getting copies of leases is not an insurmountable task.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking at, 100 units or something like that, that can be a huge administrative task.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done it before where I will actually sit in the office of the managers with the latest rent roll, and I'll take a highlighter and I'll grab the physical files. They usually have a filing cabinet with all the leases. Now I'll pull each file out, and I'm just verifying the information that is on the rent roll matches to what's in the file itself.
Mm-hmm.
So the unit number, highlight that. The tenant's name, highlight that. How much are they paying for rent? What is their security deposit? I'll make notes if there's any balances on there. And, and those are the main things that you want to, be sure about, because when you close the deal, the escrow or title company, they're going to be giving you credits for rents or whatever based on what's on that rent roll. Okay. And if that rent roll is not accurate, you could be getting shortchanged on any credits and any rents due to you.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it before. I've seen some really, outrageous just mismatches with things where on the rent roll, they're telling you that the rent is this certain amount, but on the lease it's actually, less, because they're trying to make the property look better.
Yeah.
Or they tell you that the security deposit is a certain amount, but on the lease it's different. So those kind of things are what you really kind of want to watch out when you're auditing those leases. You want to make sure the dollars match up to what's on there.
Yeah. And the reason that's so important is you're buying that income stream, right? You're buying according to those costs,
Yes.
according to those income, those money. So if they're saying they're getting 700 per unit, that's what they have on the rent roll, but the lease is saying it's 600. Well, that makes a massive difference, over 100 units in the valuation of that property. So a lease audit is critical in my book, and to be done right, to find out. And also the deposits, you want to know who has a deposit, who doesn't, how much they are, because you need to be credited that money. So then when those people move out, if you don't get the right amount, you're actually just losing money right there, because they might have that the deposit is 700, but in fact it was a different amount, and you're just going to lose money because of that. So
and I've actually heard people, it's never happened to me, but I've heard people where it's like they buy a property, but the guy that sold it didn't, transfer the security deposits, over to them.
Mm-hmm.
So now when that tenant's going to move out, well, you're going to have to pay, whatever security deposit is owed back to them. You're going to have to pay that out of your own pocket now.
Yeah.
So you don't want that to happen.
Yeah. All fantastic stuff. So it's been so much pleasure. I was just looking at the clock. I can't believe how late it is. I'm sorry if I've kept you way over time. It has kept you way too late, but it's just been, and the crazy thing is I could talk to you for another 2-3 hours easy as well. It's just been so interesting. You have so much knowledge and so much experience, and you've done, you've been so successful and done so many great things. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you. There's just a few questions that, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you, because it's, a wrestling theme type of show. So if you had a wrestling name, what would it be?
That's a great question, man. I had my wife help me out with that one. I'm from the old school, where the wrestlers were like the guys like the Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, and the Macho Man, and all those guys. And we came up with the Breakdown would be my name, because I like to break down the financials, I like to break down the numbers, I like to break down the due diligence, I like to just break it all down. And
then in the ring, you're going to break down your opponents.
That's right.
I love that. Great. The breakdown. Okay. So all wrestlers have a signature moves. So what would yours be?
Oh, well, definitely would be the ability to analyze numbers and do the due diligence, because of my background with aerospace and doing that auditing.
Yeah.
That would definitely be, my special move right there.
Okay, cool. And then what's been the biggest body slam you've taken in real estate?
The biggest body slam is, what I was mentioning before, not verifying the income on that 13 unit property. Mm-hmm. And luckily it was only a small 13 unit, because we were able to, power through on that one. But if it was, a big, 100 unit type of a property, oh my God, that could have really knocked us out of the game there.
Yeah. And you mentioned you bought the timing was right as well on that one as well, right?
Yeah.
You a lot as well. So was there a moment you were standing on the top rope, getting ready to jump, but you were scared? What was it, and how did you overcome this?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was thinking about the first deal we did when we bought that first little rental house way back when. And the great thing is that we had a home run deal. It was a great deal. There was already a Section 8 tenant in there, so we knew it was home run deal. But we had never raised money from investors. That was a totally new thing from us. We didn't even know if anybody would give us money to do the deal. Made sense to us, but that was a good thing, is that we knew we had a deal that made sense. So what we did, I put myself in the foot of an investor. What's important to an investor? Well, obviously, they want to make sure that they're secure and that their money is safe, but also beyond that, I want to make sure that if I give my money to somebody and that guy winds up screwing me over, I have some way to go after the guy. So we came up with the idea that, we would put pen to paper and we would write an agreement. I think we called it the general agreement or an investment agreement. I don't remember. It was so many years back, but basically we described on there that, hey, we're going to use, this person's money to purchase this property. We're going to manage it. And, from that, we're going to share in the profits and all that. We just kind of spelled it out. It was a one-page agreement. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible. And the funds will only be used to purchase this property so that, they know that, we're not going to use the funds and go spend it in, Vegas where you're at, maybe something like that. Because that was the thing. We wanted to make sure that if an investor gives us money, they feel good that if something goes wrong, they can go after somebody. And so we put that agreement, and then we said, we're going to take this agreement and we're going to go get it. And that way, if something goes wrong and you want to sue us, you can take this document to a judge and say, look, Omar here, he signed it. It was notarized that day. I signed it, and this is what we agreed to. And he didn't, fulfill, what he agreed to there. And that's how it worked out. And the investor felt comfortable about that. And, now, back then we weren't, knowledgeable about syndication and all that, but that's kind of how we figured it out.
Yeah, and I'm sure your investors were glad they got on board with you, because I'm sure.
We don't do it like that anymore, though. We do it the right way now.
Right. Of course, but back then you didn't know, right? And I'm sure syndications weren't such a thing then as they are now. They're a dime a dozen, and there's so much out there about them. But and again, it's a resourcefulness, right? To find a way, figure out how to do it, or a way to make it work and make it happen. And that's what it takes to be successful. I think the resourcefulness and that willingness to make it happen. So it's another great story. So thank you so much. It's been, again, I apologize massively, but I think anyone who listens to this will have really, really enjoyed the talk. I know I did. I didn't even feel like a host. I felt like a guest or someone watching a great interview, because I enjoyed every second of it. I learned so much, and you had so many fantastic stories. So before we go, I'd like to give you a chance, if anyone wants to reach out to you for either maybe to talk about investing with you guys, or use your property management group, or anything else, feel free to plug everything that you have right this moment.
Sure, absolutely. You can find out more about me. I got a blog and our website. That website, it's LeRuInvestments.com, and LeRu is spelled LERU, and followed by investments with an S at the end.com. And you can find out more about property management at Home Choice, P like Paul, M like Mary.com.
Fantastic. And I'll include those in the description. So anyone needing to find you, they can find you there. So once again, thank you so much for giving up so much of your time. You shared so much knowledge and so many nuggets that people can take away from this interview and kind of apply to their investment career that I think you'll hopefully, I'm sure help a lot of people. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Barry. You got a great channel, and I'm sure you're helping out a lot of people out there as well, man. So kudos to you. Great job.
You mentioned you had a YouTube channel. Let's plug that as well before we go.
It's just LeRu Investments. I think if you go on YouTube and you search LeRu Investments, it should come up. There's tons of videos out there. Me, boots on the ground, doing things out there in the investing world, going about it. So look for us at LeRu Investments on YouTube.
Well, you have one subscriber here for sure. First thing I'm going to do is
awesome.
Get off there. Thank you once again, man. Before you go, I wanted to extend an offer to you. It's a free 30-minute call with me. I love to talk about real estate, and I'd love to get to know any of you out there. So If you're interested in talking more about real estate with me, there's a link in the description below and you can sign up there and find a time that works, and we can get on a call and we can talk about real estate, my favorite thing to do.